Hi, everybody, and welcome to Point of Purchase by GeekSpeak Commerce. My name is Isaac Wanzama. I'm the founder and chief strategist at GeekSpeak, and I'll be the host for today's episode. On this show, if you know you've been watching us for a while, you know that we gather experts from the retail ecosystem and talk about trends, technologies, business strategy, and so much more. This is our 29th episode of POP, believe it or not. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about a growing trend or component of digital advertising for CPG brands called retail media networks. RMNs, as they're known, have become increasingly important for brands looking to advertise online for a number of reasons. One being the proximity to the buyer's point of purchase, and then, of course, the potential impact on sales overall. Retail media, as we know, is growing very quickly in Canada, with a projected number of 5.1 billion in 2027, and that's up from 3 billion in 2024. So the numbers obviously increasing there. And RMNs themselves constitute about 20% of all digital spend in the Canadian market, according to eMarketer. So from Amazon to Instacart, to Walmart to Loblaws, Voila, and so many more, retailers are beginning to enable brands to advertise directly on their websites. So this is true in the CPG category with Loblaws, as I mentioned, but of course, Canadian Tire, Marks, and so many other more. So joining me to dig into this today about the benefits, the features, and why RMNs are becoming such a big part of the strategy for CPG brands are Trisha Williams and Roger D'Souza from GeekSpeak Commerce. Welcome, Trisha and Roger, to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
I was going to say happy spring, but it's -5 today. Hold on, Trisha, I think you may be on mute there.
We'll have to hold off on that one. Celebrating spring, but it's an all geek speak conversation today, which is nice.
Which is awesome. We haven't done this for a while, which is exciting. But before we dive in, as we often do, please, if you're watching the show and you have questions for myself or obviously the two panelists who are here today to talk about RMNs, please leave them in the comments, and then of course share your experience you may have with this platform as well. So let's get started. Let's get into it, Trisha and Roger. And before we get too far, I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, introduce your role at GeekSpeak, and your experience with RMNs. I know both of you spend quite a bit of time working with your customers on these platforms. Trisha, why don't you go first?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm Trisha Williams. I'm the managing partner and client success leader at GeekSpeak. So I work very closely with our existing clients as well as engaging with prospects as well. And retail media networks are still very new or young in Canada. So I spend a lot of my time spreading awareness that the various platforms exist and could be a great vehicle for online and in-store growth. So educating brands on the options that are available to them and providing some encouragement from time to time to them to just test and learn, because the payoff can really be impactful, as we've seen in a number of cases.
Fantastic. That's absolutely true. Roger, over to you.
Hi there, my name is Roger D'Souza. I'm the digital marketing manager at GeekSpeak. I'm responsible for advertising for our clients across several platforms, including retail media networks. And I've been doing this since almost 8 years now. And I started off with Amazon, and now we're slowly and gradually going on different retail media networks. And I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. So, Roger, you're probably the perfect person to set the stage for us. For those who may be new to this space, describe what retail media networks are and how they differ from traditional digital media, like Google as an example.
Sure. So retail media networks are platforms that are owned and operated by the retailers themselves. They allow brands to place ads on their properties. This could include their websites, their apps, or even in some cases, in-store display screens. These networks leverage first-party shopper data, which allow advertisers to deliver highly targeted and highly relevant ads, mostly at the point of purchase. In contrast, where you look at the traditional pay-per-click ad campaigns, like in the platforms like Google, they focus on driving traffic. They operate on a broader scale, and they are focused on driving traffic to a particular website or a landing page that allow that conversion to happen. Compared to RMNs, they offer a direct path to conversion, and often it's more effective and cheaper.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we've got an amazing diagram, which I think kind of lays it out really well here. So let's dig into some of the key RMN players, particularly for CPGs in Canada. Who are you using, and what are your customers bringing over?
So the oldest one I would say is Amazon, that has been in the market for a very long time. Following that, the top five I would say is Amazon, Loblaws Advance, Instacart, Walmart Connect, and Sobeys Media. And they're the top five, at least from my side.
Fantastic. And you set off the top there that these platforms have a different way of offering management on these ads. Explain the difference between a managed scenario and a self-serve scenario, which I know that some brands are trying to really understand in terms of which one they want to consider.
Sure. So managed services are services operated and provided by the retailers themselves with their in-house team. Often they have the most expertise, and the only drawback is that they require a heavy investment upfront. Whereas on self-serve, you have your own dashboard you can control, and there's a lot of flexibility in how you can control the budget. So that's two different ways to go about it. But there is an in between, which is hiring an agency where you have the expertise and you don't need to have the heavy investment upfront, and you can control that budget and you can experiment along the way.
Fantastic. And I think that's some of what Trisha talked about when she talked about this test and learn approach. And so Trisha, back to you. I mean, you said you spent quite a bit of your time, evangelizing and talking about the benefits of these new networks to customers. Let's talk about some of the key benefits that brands, whether new or established, can do, Trisha, in terms of making this part of their strategy.
Sure. There are a lot of benefits, honestly, and Roger's already started to touch on some of them. And the ones that I tend to focus on mostly are, I would say, first off, closed loop measurement, which Roger touched on. So brands can track ad spend directly online to their sales, and they have better visibility into their return on investment. Unlike other trade spend, where often you don't necessarily get a lot of visibility into campaign performance. So with RMNs, you can directly tie attributed sales to your ad spend, which is why a lot of brands are really interested in this space. You can see that direct line. So it also makes it a little bit easier for them to get access to funding for ad spend from the business itself. So if you can literally say, I invested $1 and got $5, that's a great story to take back to the leadership team. Second, I would say, RMNs offer up a high intent audience. So with RMNs, you're reaching consumers who are already on a retailer site. So they're either actively shopping or browsing. So their intent to purchase is very high. And as mentioned, the consumer is very close to that point of purchase, unintended. And then third, improved brand visibility, right? So ads are being shown where purchases are happening, whether on the PDP or in search results. And they also help to drive some last minute impulse purchasing decisions as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think your point around closed loop measurements is probably one of the most important considerations here. Brands always want to make sure that they're spending their money in the right place and getting the results they want. And it sounds like RMNs do that. Now, as we're trying to decide as brands, where to put our dollars, how do we fit this opportunity into all of our marketing strategy? Maybe you could run that out, Trish.
Sure. I think there are a few different ways. RMNs they can be used for full funnel planning. While we at GeekSpeak primarily focus on sales, there are different ad types or options that are suited for upper or mid funnel activities as well. So, when it comes to full funnel planning, RMNs are not just for lower funnel conversions, but, it may include things like banners, display ads, video ads, or even brand pages to showcase your full product assortment. But I will also say that whatever you're doing on an RMN should complement your other activities. So things that you're doing on social, other paid search opportunities, there should be some consistency and continuity, right? The other thing about RMNs is that you can leverage the data that you get, that valuable first-party data, So the things that you're learning on those platforms, you can start to make some inferences and apply those wins to the other platforms that you're advertising on, like Meta or Google and so forth.
That's fantastic. Great answer there. Roger, over to you. I mean, you're spending a lot of your time building out these campaigns, evaluating these campaigns, and reporting back to the brands. Let's talk about how you're tailoring your strategies, right? And I imagine strategies on RMS are going to vary between the different categories you work in. So let's talk about how you plan for food versus health and beauty versus household goods when you're thinking about building out these strategies.
So it all starts with what the client's objectives are, what their goals are, whether it could be maintaining growing market share or maybe maintaining that in that case. But sales and profitability is something that it's mostly catered to. So the goals are always to kind of get the sales numbers up and going. Once we are aware of what the client's needs are, what the objectives are, we go into a lot of research. It includes category, competitor research, product research itself. And one more thing that really allows us to help understand how to get the best results is looking at previous campaigns that we're running. So we can really get all our learnings and insights from there and apply it in a new strategy, in that new strategy. And that really helps us a lot.
Yeah, fantastic. Like the historical performance or lack thereof could be really quite key
for sure.
In shaping plan. So Trisha, to kind of let's tie in the goals of RMNs a little bit here. Not quite at the KPI level yet, but if I'm a brand, what really matters? Are we talking about sales, brand awareness, as my main goal, or as in terms of doing this, or is it a mix or somewhere in between?
I'd say it's definitely a mix, but it depends on where a brand is in its e-commerce journey, right? Sometimes, or should I say most times, there's an urgency to capture as much sales as possible, right? And RMNs really lend themselves well to that lower funnel activity, right? It's typically all about driving sales, but it can be used for awareness as well, right? So whether there's a brand entering a new category, or a brand has a new innovation, or even a new flavor variation, we can certainly use RMNs to spread awareness about these items. The other thing I would say is, it's a great place to test and learn, as we spoke about earlier. RMNs make it really easy to do so at low risk. So campaigns are really flexible. They're easy to adjust once they're live. That's something that Roger does on a daily basis, where he's constantly tweaking these campaigns, right? And then we can also test. We can do A/B testing, looking at different creatives and so forth. So, and then from that, we can use the best performing campaigns on other platforms, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on something you said there, the whole notion of innovations that a CPG brand may have. How have you seen your brands use RMNs to kind of bring a product and brand awareness to market?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think it's one of those things where a brand may be established, but they have a new, let's say, flavor, or they're entering a new category. It's a great way to utilize things like display ads, where you're actually getting a lot of eyeballs on those ads without necessarily searching for that particular product, right? Or there are other opportunities to do co-branded ads as well, depending on the platform. Instacart typically has a lot of those opportunities available. Some of them are seasonal. It may be things like back to school programs. It may be Valentine's Day. It may be cold and flu season, where you do want to capitalize on getting new products in front of a lot of eyeballs. So there are plenty of options there, and the platforms are always offering those up to brands for them to participate in.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully cold and flu season is behind us. Roger, anything you'd like to add to that?
Not really. But the only thing that I have in my head right now is to understand, for me, it's all about what the client's expectations are. And
right.
Based off that, I'll have to think about it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, just before we move on to the questions, and thank you so much for the insights you're both providing. Your knowledge is certainly, hopefully it's helping brands as they think about this. Before we get to the next question, I do want to take a moment to let you know you're watching Point of Purchase, episode 29. If you do have questions for our panel, please leave them in the comments and we'll talk through them as we go along. And so back to the questions here, Trish. You mentioned off the top that RMNs or digital advertising is going to fit within a larger framework of advertising for brand, right? I'm putting my money in a lot of different places. So, and a lot of different RMNs and platforms overall. How do brands choose the best place and the best platform to spend their money when it comes to RMN?
It's a good question, and one that we get asked a lot. To sort of weigh in, getting our opinion on where brands should spend their ad dollars. And quite honestly, based on my experience, the two most important factors are one, making sure that you're either building or maintaining a strong relationship with your customers, meaning the retailers, by participating and investing in their specific platform. So, that investment is an expression of commitment to the relationship. So it's something that I think goes a long way in endearing a brand to a retail partner, for sure. So that's very important. And it can get tricky, right? Because brands have a number of different customers where those relationships may be equally as important, right? The second one I would say, is from a brand perspective, you also need to win financially, right? And this is typically the most important metric from a brand perspective, because they really start to examine where they can get the best incremental ROAS, right? So without naming names, there are some platforms that generally give a better return on investment. So if a brand can go to its leadership team, as I said earlier, and say, if we have a $1 investment, we can bring in $5 in sales or have a 5x ROAS plus 35% new to brand sales, that's a pretty compelling story, right? So for me, it's those two factors that are most important. One, just building or maintaining a strong relationship with the retailer, and two, getting a financial return.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's those type of results that we have certainly seen with some of our customers that's driving the growth in sort of retail media overall, and particularly in RMNs. And the truth is in the pudding, as they say. So, Roger, back to you. Let's talk about the mechanics here in terms of building these campaigns and getting some of the successes that you have seen with some of your customers. Let's talk about what does customer segmentation look like in when it comes to RMN and RMN campaigns, and how are you targeting and building these strategies out?
So like each platform have their own set of ad formats. They have the common ones, but they also include some different formats as well. So it depends on what the client's objectives are and tying it back to what the platform offers. That's one piece of it. The most common ad format is the pay-per-click or the keyword targeted campaigns. So a good keyword research ensures you're getting you're targeting the right audience. On the other hand, you have platforms that offer more creative liberty in terms of advertising, where you can run display banners and display campaigns, and that would allow us to even target new to brand customers, which is a huge win, because tying your ad dollars to new customers is a very separate. It's a very new thing in the market. So that's a really key piece of it. And then there are other instances where you have the budget, the clients want to really go aggressive. And we go against with some aggressive approaches like customer competitive conquesting, where you can target different competitors and kind of grow that market share. So,
right, and I think this is where RMNs are winning over traditional, media, where you understand a customer's buying habits. You know what products they buy. You know what categories are in. You have so much information as a first party provider, which is what retailers are, to be able to do that. And I think that's one of the winnings here. And on to Trisha, back to you on the point of data and the role that customer data is playing in marketing success. Talk to us about how your team uses some of this data when it comes to RMNs, and how does it differ from some of these television or radio or out of home advertising that we see.
Sure, there are definitely a few differences for sure, and we were just talking about one of the most important ones, right? So First is a data source. So RMNs, as we've said repeatedly, offer first-party data from retailers. So it's actual shopping and purchasing data. There's a history there that's real. Whereas other platforms like Meta or Google, they're relying on third-party data or behavioral signals, right? So metrics including things like likes, searches, clicks, and so on. So RMNs give more accurate or commerce-focused targeting because it's based on what consumers are actually buying. The other difference I would say is the audience accuracy. So RMNs offer very high accuracy. So you're able to target shoppers by real purchasing history or basket behavior, right? So whereas the other platforms offer, let's say, moderate or maybe lower accuracy based on inferred interests from clicks and views or engagement. So these are things that we think consumers are thinking or interested in. It's not necessarily what they've actually purchased or added to cart. And then also RMNs let you reach people more likely to convert. We just touched on this earlier, right? They're already on a platform with an intent to purchase. And then the big one I would say is attribution, as we've been talking about, right? So this closed loop attribution allows brands to track whether an ad actually led to a sale. And that, I know that's Roger's favorite metric to showcase, where his ads are really driving those sales. Whereas with other platforms, they have that open loop attribution, so you can see clicks and views, but you can't always tie it back to real purchases. So brands get a clearer return on investment with RMNs for sure.
Yeah, and I think that to me is probably one of the most compelling reasons we make it part of the strategies when we talk to brands go to market. And kind of tied to that, I'm going to bring in another area of analytics here, Trisha, called digital shelf analytics. This is DSA. So let's talk about how digital shelf monitoring and the information we get about how our brand, our product is doing overall on the digital shelf can tie into the effectiveness of an RMN strategy.
Sure, it's a good question. And DSAs or digital shelf analytics tools are very topical. A lot of brands are talking about them as of late. Over the past few years, a lot of tools have come onto the scene. Tools like Profitero, Commerce IQ, Shalion, DataWeave, and others. So these tools essentially crawl retailer sites and they pull back data on things like content accuracy, stock availability, pricing, assortment, and a lot of other data points, right? The more advanced platforms go a bit further. So they show how your product is performing against competitors in a category. So they're tracking share of search and highlighting opportunities to improve visibility, whether organically or through paid ads. So, I would say if you're in the market for a DSA tool, try to find one that offers you this level of insight, because it can be, a great tool to complement your efforts on the paid ad side.
Fantastic. Yeah, and let's not forget to mention that we have Scooty, which is our own in-house tool that we use for some of this work. So Roger, back over to you, and Trisha, thank you so much for digging into some of those data points. So Roger, when it comes to analytics and reporting, and part of your role is communicating to our brand customers how they're doing, how successful their campaigns are being. So what kind of data points do these platforms have, and give you access to, and how are you using some of that data in the decision making that you're doing?
Sure. So the retail media networks themselves provide a ton of information, which is that allow us to optimize these campaigns, and they're generally great. Some of them include the ones that are really evolving now, and slowly all of them will catch on. They are providing information that attributes sales to new to brand customers, like I mentioned earlier, the win rates from these ads, where those ads are getting the most conversion in terms of placement, whether it's search related or product detail pages. So they give you a lot of information right off the bat that we can optimize those campaigns for. So besides that, there are the regular metrics, which is the clicks and the impression shares and all of that, which everyone's providing. But there's some of the platforms are providing even more. And
Right.
slowly, I believe we're seeing a lot of evolution happen towards the retail media space, where everyone's trying to give even more insights to advertisers, and more so this is like brand new information that was never available before. That's because they have the first part, they have the information firsthand. Another aspect I would like to mention is that our clients as well, where they go above and beyond and share actual sales data from the entire from the retailers themselves, that showcase, that helps us understand how our advertising is creating an impact not only on e-commerce sales but offline sales as well, in-store
Right.
sales. So I think that's all the information that really helps us optimize these campaigns.
That's fantastic. And then just to stay with you, Raj, a little bit. I mean, a brand wants to try RMNs, or they want to engage in this practice area because they want certain results, right? In your experience, how do you measure success, and how do you know that your campaigns are working?
Like I mentioned earlier, it all depends on what the client's objectives are.
Right.
Mostly it's sales and profitability, but how profitable you can make those campaigns is a separate case altogether. Like you can spend $1,000 and generate $1,000 in sales, brand all new to brand, but you're not getting you're not getting the right return on that investment.
Right.
So that's one of the key factors that we focus on, is the profitability aspect of it, because there is a default expectation that once you invest in advertising, there will be sales growth. That's for
Right.
sure. But how profitable you are, that's the key metric that we focus on.
Right. Because you could be making sales, but making sales at a loss, right? We're trying to make sales at a profit.
Oh, definitely, for sure. And on the other hand, if the objectives are to build awareness and spread, to get a bigger share of voice, then there are other strategies to use where it's not really tied into the return,
Right.
but more into how much engagement we're getting, or how many people are viewing our products, and how many impressions we were able to generate with our ads. So kind of it all ties back to what the client's objectives are and what the goals are for the campaigns, and that's how we measure our success.
Right. And I'm going to pause, Roger, because there's a question from our audience. What specific KPIs do you measure when it comes to running an RMN campaign? And I think you touched on some of this already, but maybe you could expand on specific KPIs.
So the regular metrics, like the clicks and impression share, show us how well we are doing in terms of the relevancy of our ad, how targeted our advertising is. So that's the basics cover that. The second thing that I look after is the new to brand sales. Are we getting in new customers? In some cases, like I would say at least 20% new to brand ratio is pretty good. In fact, it's great. But once we have touched that, what's next? So we try to push that a little higher and higher and try to get even more. So new to brand sales is one thing that I really look forward to in terms of how well our advertising is doing to get new customers. But again, ROAS and return on ad spend is where my focus is always will be, because that's where the profitability is.
Fantastic. And that's a great answer, Roger. Thank you for that. So, I mean, you guys have both given quite a bit of information here, and hopefully, brands are out there thinking and realizing this opportunity for them to drive and grow their sales in this new avenue. So, Trisha, back to you. I'm a small or mid-sized brand, and I'm thinking about RMNs and advertising because a rep from Walmart has called me, or Loblaws has said this opportunity is there. What's your key takeaway? What should I be thinking about as I'm beginning to evaluate this opportunity?
I would say be willing to test and learn, right? And it's something, like, as I said off the top, we try to encourage brands to do as well. So whether brands are utilizing their own teams internally or working with an agency like GeekSpeak to build or manage your campaigns, I'd say just go for it, test and learn, right? It's relatively low risk. And you can start off with a small budget, depending on what you have access to, and then grow from there. Once you start to see results, you can up the ante and add to that budget. And then the other thing I would say is try to be as patient as possible, right? We do recommend always on campaigns as a default. We don't, you do want to boost your ad spend during key moments in the retail calendar, but we do recommend that you keep your ads on throughout the year, because there's a lot of learnings that can be had over a 12-month period, right? Just that help you to refine your campaigns year over year. And when you start and stop, you sort of lose access to that. And then the other part of that is you also lose momentum. So it's important that brands stay patient, because typically the heavy lifting and the rough patch is in the beginning. You do have to give the campaign some time to mature so that you can really reap the benefits. And what we found is that brands who are willing to do that really see a good payoff in the end.
Fantastic. And Roger, the same question to you. I mean, your hands in. What are some thoughts for brand maybe thinking about just maybe dipping their toe in this space?
So I'll second what Trisha said, is an always-on approach, because I have seen this across different product categories where with sporadic advertising efforts, the return that was being was the return was like around 3x to 4x, and by just having an always-on strategy, that 3x to 4x went to 6x and 7x.
Right.
So you can actually double grow. You can double the growth right off the bat. So an always-on strategy is definitely the way to go, because there's a lot of seasonality involved that you're not really taking advantage of. That's one piece of it. And the second one, like I would recommend, is start small, experiment a lot at the beginning, and test everything. Test all the platforms, because in my experience, one brand that is very successful on platform A is tanking on platform B. Like.
Right.
It's not generating the same amount of results. Even the results are good, 3x is good, but on the other platform, getting 11x, 12x. So each platform, each brand operates differently on each platform. So that's really key. So I would say start small, experiment a lot, and that will allow you to pivot in the direction you want to be at.
Testing and learning, and that's all really great advice. And thank you both for the amount of time you've given us to kind of speak with our audience. And just before we wrap, we also have a fun questions. This is going to be more of a future-looking question. I said off the top that this is a space that's growing, $5.1 billion projected in spend in 2027, 20% of all ad spend. That is huge numbers according to eMarketer. Trisha, what's exciting you about the next 12 to 24 months about RMNs? What do you see happening?
Yeah, I mean, I'm most excited about what you just said, the growth opportunities for both the brands as well as the retailers that we work with. RMNs, as we said, they're still fairly new or young in Canada. So there are plenty of opportunities to grow while competition is still relatively low in comparison to the US, right? I mean, Voila just made their self-serve ad platform available in October of last year. So I think there are still lots of good things to come. And the existing platforms are always evolving and expanding their capabilities as well. So they're going to keep us on our toes, but they also present great opportunities for growth.
Fantastic. So if I'm a retailer, I should be thinking about building an RMN. If I'm a brand, I should be thinking about advertising on RMN. Roger, what's exciting you about the next 12 to 24 months in this space?
I'd like to say that the platforms are evolving very quickly. There is new insights being shared for the first time to advertisers, which is really exciting. There's more ad formats coming in. Like this is within a matter of quarters. Like in the next quarter, we can expect another ad format showing up anytime. So there's a lot happening, and I'm really excited to see where we can take things forward for our clients.
That's fantastic. And that's Roger's excited face. Thank you for those great comments. I do want to thank you both for your time today. This has been a great show. Show number 29. You both shared quite a bit of knowledge. And I want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in to Point of Purchase. If you do want to follow us, check out geekspeakcommerce.com to find out about our next episode. If you have any questions that were not answered today, feel free to email them to us, and we'll follow up from there. And we'll see you on our next show. Trisha and Roger, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Awesome.
Take care, guys.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.